Hello everybody, Jack from Astral in the studios here, and today I'm going to take you through some of my animation process for our video game Dodo Alone. Today we're going to go through the example that is the Dodo walk animation. I posted a big GIF on social media giving a brief run through of the animation process, just showing and highlighting certain bits, but I wanted to use this video as a more in-depth breakdown of the animation process that I personally like to use. So let's get into it. The first thing I like to get sorted is what sort of reference I'm using. Lots of the time for other characters and other animations I just film myself basically doing the action. However, as mentioned in our last devlog on animation, I actually used big birds such as geese, swans, emus, and in this example ostriches to give me an idea of how I would want to animate a dodo. This is because the skeletons of birds are quite different to humans, as you would imagine, particularly the legs, which are pretty fundamental to walking animations. See, if you have a look here, birds have a femur like us, which are our thigh bone. They also have a tibia, which is our shins, but they also have this other extra bone here, which is called the tarsus, or however, I think that's how you say it. But that is just to say they have an extra joint to us, but also if you have a look at this, their bones are very differently proportioned to ours as well. Like their femur doesn't look to be the largest bone in their body, which is different to ours because in humans, the femur is the largest bone in the body. A little fun fact for you right there. Now, to put all this together, you really want to try and understand the structure of your drawing and how you're going to try and make it move. If you're going to try and animate anything, try to find a moving reference, and if you're trying to animate something that doesn't exist, like a dodo for example, then try and find something close to it. You can smoothen things out later and embellish or stylize. So let's have a close look at this footage of the ostrich here. As you can see, I've broken it down into its key frames. For those who don't know, key frames are basically the frames of the animation where the poses are the strongest and most dynamic. For walk cycles in particular, there's a great video by Alan Becker, who has a tutorial on it, on walk cycles in general. So if you want to learn more, just head on over there. But to summarize, you've got yourself a contact pose, which is when your foot makes contact with the ground, then a down pose, which is where the body is at its lowest, then a passing pose where your feet cross over each other, and then an up pose where your body's at its highest and you're kind of pushing off a little bit. And you can also see this in the ostrich animation. You've got your contact pose here, your down pose, your passing pose, and then your up pose. And then it just continues on. And it looks like they're walking. Wow, kind of neat, ain't it? Now, there are things that are really helpful in this reference, particularly the legs, as I mentioned before. But there are some things I would like to change. As you may have noticed, the up and down poses aren't particularly pronounced. And it kind of makes the ostrich look a little bit stiff. Secondly, I want to regulate this head bob. Another fun fact, because I'm just full of fun facts, is that dodos are actually a type of pigeon, or part of the pigeon family. And I don't know about you, but I personally really like how pigeons' heads just bob back and forth. Very mesmerizing. Look at these guys strut. It's just something I really wanted to capture in the animation. For me, this is ultimately what reference comes down to. There are just some places where my knowledge is just not as strong, so I use a reference to kind of back that up and fortify a little bit. But then there's some times where I just have the experience and the knowledge where I know what I want, and then I can kind of take that into my own hands and craft something to my own liking. So don't just copy from your references. Make sure you are understanding what makes the reference work and doesn't work. Analyze it and learn from it. So let's finally get on to the animating, huh? Now, I actually started this animation with the sprite of the dodo made already. I had already made animations for the running and idle animations. But if you are starting from scratch, generally what I like to do, I like to make a full render and then break down characteristics into different levels here. So as you can see, I've got the graphic on one level, then you've got the wings, and then you've got the legs, you've got the body, and then you've got the tail as well. You've got all these different parts that I just like to break down on different layers. With movement like this, it can get very complicated very quickly. So I like to break things down to smaller parts and focus on one body part at a time. So this begs the question, where do we start if we want to create an animation? I personally like starting with what I'd call the anchor point. Think of it like this, as a tree with it being the root node. This is the part of the body that is driving the movement from which most, if not all, other body parts react and move relative to. For this example, I'm going to use the body as my main anchor point. And this is where the wireframe comes in very handy. I don't know if this is something other people do, But this is something I've kind of developed over time, and it's just a way for me to plan what the movement of the dodo will be before I go in and fully paint it. So if you turn everything off apart from our anchor point, which is the body, which is this wireframe here, let me just turn the body on. You can see how it's just moving in a 3x3 square path, just going along the perimeter of the square. Kind of looks like how 8 planks of wood in Minecraft will make a chest. Then I'll link the base of the neck, and then I'll link the head. The reason I do this is because the body moves the neck, which then moves the head. If we take a closer look and have a look at the head in isolation, you can see it's just moving back and forth and doing the bops. Probably listening to some Dodo jams or something. And I've got this bop happening every single 8 frames. However, when I try and match it up to the body, you can see they're not together. But because I've done them in separation, then I just match up position-wise each frame to the body, and we'll end up with something like this. I then repeat this process for the rest of the body, like a tail, and then the wing, and then, so on and so forth. Now, if we do go back to our map here, this map will change for every single animation you do, but this is just something that I like to think in my head. So I'll think, okay, so we had the body, the body will directly affect the wings, and then the wings will directly affect the chain. So I don't just go from the body and then make the chain, because the chain will be reacting and moving relative to the wings. So I do the wings first, and then I add in the grappling hook, and then I add in the chain. Now, I must admit, I don't always use this wireframe technique. However, it's a very helpful tool to fall back on if something's not quite working. For example, in this project, I kind of eyeballed the head movement because it was simple enough. But other things like the legs, they were way too complicated for me just to kind of keep track of in my head. So I had to break it down step by step with the wireframe. And even in this example, I could have broken it down even further by doing one bone at a time. So we could have done the femur, then I could have done the tibia, and then I could have done the tarsometatarsals. I sound so posh when I do that. And so that's basically it. These tips aren't just for the walk cycle, but for just animation in general and how I approach it. When things get too complex, break it down and use a reference. Maybe try out some different tools like the wireframe here, or some basic block out as you'll see other people do online. I hope you, dear viewer, found this guide helpful or at least somewhat interesting. If you want a tutorial on anything specific about pixel art or video game development in general, just put it in the comment section below and we'll see if we can make a helpful tutorial on it. I've also made a tutorial on how to make pixel art portrait sprites akin to those in the Fire Emblem GBA games. So if that interests you, feel free to give it a little bit of a watch. We've also put out devlogs for our game that we're working on, Dodo Alone, which this animation is a part of. So if you are intrigued and want to have a little look at what this Dodo game is about, feel free to head on over there. The latest one was just on animation alone and going really in depth on the history and the physiology, the anatomy, and the other words that are very long on the dodo. So if you found this video interesting, you'll probably find that one interesting too. So go watch that one as well. Go watch them. Go watch all of them. Or don't, if you don't want to. That's cool as well. Anyway, thank you so much for watching to the end. I'll see you guys soon. See you later.